The knife trembled in the old man's hand as he raised it above his son's bound body, the morning sun glinting off the blade while the boy's wide eyes searched his father's face for an answer that wouldn't come. But let me take you back to where it all began, to a time when this man was not yet Abraham, but Abram, living in the ancient city of Ur, among the ziggurats and the endless stars. He was 75 years old, settled into the rhythms of life with his wife Sarai, when a voice split through the ordinary world like lightning through dark clouds. "Leave everything," the voice said. "Leave your country, your people, your father's household, and go to a land I will show you." And in that moment, though he had no map, no guarantee, no logical reason to obey, Abram gathered his wife, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, and walked into the unknown. The journey led them through Canaan, where God appeared to him again and made a promise that seemed impossible for a childless old man. "Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars, as countless as the dust of the earth." Abram believed, though his tent remained quiet, though years passed and Sarai's womb stayed closed. They traveled to Egypt during a famine, and fear made Abram tell a half-truth, calling Sarai his sister, nearly losing her to Pharaoh's house before God intervened. They returned to Canaan wealthier, but not wiser. Not yet. Lot and Abram parted ways when their herdsmen quarreled, and Lot chose the well-watered plains near Sodom, while Abram remained in the hills. When kings from the east swept down and captured Lot, Abram became a warrior, leading 318 trained men on a night raid to rescue his nephew. Victory came swiftly, and a mysterious king named Melchizedek blessed him with bread and wine, and Abram gave him a tenth of everything. But still, no child came. Sarai, watching her body betray the promise year after year, made a desperate decision. "Take my servant Hagar," she told her husband, "and perhaps I can build a family through her." So Abram did, and Hagar conceived, and immediately the household fractured with jealousy and pride. Hagar fled into the wilderness, where an angel found her by a spring and sent her back, promising her own multitudes. She bore a son named Ishmael, and for 13 years Abram believed this was the fulfillment. Then God came again, and this time everything changed. Abram became Abraham, father of many nations, and Sarai became Sarah, princess. God made a covenant marked in flesh, commanding circumcision for every male. And he made a promise so absurd that Abraham fell on his face laughing. Sarah, who was 90 years old, would bear a son. When 3 mysterious visitors appeared at his tent, one of them repeated the promise, and Sarah, listening from inside, laughed too. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" the visitor asked. Those same visitors went down to Sodom, and Abraham walked with them part way, learning that God intended to destroy the cities of the plain for their wickedness. Abraham bargained with God like a merchant in the marketplace, pleading for mercy if 50 righteous people could be found. Then 45, then 40, 30, 20, finally 10. God agreed to each condition, but 10 righteous souls could not be found. Fire and brimstone rained from heaven, and Lot barely escaped with his daughters, while his wife became a pillar of salt for looking back. Then came the miracle. Sarah conceived, and at the appointed time she bore a son, and they named him Isaac, which means laughter, because God had brought them laughter in their old age. Abraham held his baby and marveled at the faithfulness of promises kept. But Sarah saw Ishmael mocking during Isaac's weaning feast, and her joy turned to jealousy. "Send away the slave woman and her son," she demanded. Abraham was distressed, loving both his sons, but God told him to listen to Sarah, promising to make Ishmael into a nation as well. So Hagar and Ishmael were sent into the wilderness with bread and water, and when the water ran out, an angel showed them a well. For years, Abraham raised Isaac, teaching him, loving him, watching him grow into the child of promise. Then God spoke again, and this time the words cut like the knife Abraham would later raise. Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering." 3 days Abraham walked with his son and 2 servants, the wood for the sacrifice on Isaac's back, the fire and knife in Abraham's hands. 3 days of every step taking him closer to the unthinkable. The servants stayed behind, and father and son climbed the mountain alone. "Father," Isaac said, "we have fire and wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" "God himself will provide the lamb," Abraham answered, and the words were either faith or madness or both. On the mountain, Abraham built the altar, arranged the wood, bound his son, and laid him on top. The knife trembled in the old man's hand as he raised it above his son's bound body, the morning sun glinting off the blade, while the boy's wide eyes searched his father's face for an answer that wouldn't come. But before the blade could fall, a voice called from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." A ram caught in a thicket by its horns became the sacrifice instead, and Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." The angel called a second time, reaffirming every promise because Abraham had not withheld his only son. They walked down the mountain together, father and son, changed by what had almost happened, held by what had been provided. Sarah died at 127 years old, and Abraham wept for her and bought a cave at Machpelah to bury her, the first piece of the promised land he actually owned. He sent his servant back to his homeland to find a wife for Isaac, refusing to let his son marry a Canaanite woman, and the servant returned with Rebekah, who brought comfort to Isaac after his mother's death. Abraham married again himself a woman named Keturah, and had more sons, but he gave everything to Isaac. When Abraham died at 175 years old, full of years and satisfied, both Isaac and Ishmael came to bury him beside Sarah in the cave at Machpelah. He was laid to rest in the only plot of the promised land he ever owned, but he died believing in the promise of descendants more numerous than stars, believing that somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, God would keep every word he had spoken to a childless old man who once walked away from everything he knew because a voice told him to go.